All right, so let's start and welcome. So today we are going to talk about the WebEx Teams SDKs and widgets. So hopefully you all love WebEx Teams on laptops, and so I guess you all have WebEx Teams. Who's got WebEx Teams on their? Yeah, everyone. Great, cool. Almost 100%. Great. So hopefully you love it. A great video quality. A nice film strip, you can see everyone, you can remote or mute remote people, all powered by the cloud. Great messaging and secured messaging. But what about people if they are living within a business application? And that's the topic of today. If the end users from your company or end users of your customers, they might live within a business application. And we'll talk about all the use case. It could be a doctor, like in this one. The doctor prefer to use their own healthcare application. And that's where we want to reach those end users. So the WebEx Teams, it's an open platform. And the value of it is you can bring all the features from the WebEx platform to their business application that they are living in every day, they are using it every day. So that's the topic of today. So I'm very happy to present that. So I'm Olivier, product manager, working on the WebEx Teams SDKs and widget, based in San Francisco. But I used to live in Paris, so very nearby. And I've got the pleasure to co-present with David. David, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm David Stout. I'm a developer advocate, evangelist with Cisco DevNet. I've covered Cisco collaboration APIs for 17 years now. So,
Thanks. Great. And so to present the WebEx SDK, so we'll start with a very high level of the SDKs and widgets and the difference about what is an SDK, so a software developer kit or a powerful library so that you can embed WebEx Teams within your application. We'll describe the widget as well, which is an even easier solution to embed, again, Teams on your application. And then with David will do a code demo on how to make it happen on your laptop or your mobile. So let's start, and you will be able to interact with us directly, with David or myself, within Teams, of course. So what are the use cases? We covered a bit the doctor in the introduction. So the doctor might live within a healthcare application, and then you need to embed Teams in this application so that the doctor and the patient can reach each other, they can message, and then they can escalate to maybe a group chat where you've got the nurse or all the healthcare providers together with the patient. And sometimes they want to connect as well with the patient or the patient of or the family of the patient all together. So that's the purpose of the healthcare use case, where you've got all the caregivers and the patient together. And this way, we've got already partners who manage to save some times in the emergency service or in the hospital, the number of rooms used by the hospital, so a quicker resolution. And they manage to reduce the death of people, so pretty impressive result on this vertical. We do have a lot of interest on finance, and I know that many people register to this session coming from a lot of banks in Europe. So I've seen the list of people who registered. I don't know if you all join. Did you all register online to this session? So I'm sure there are some people working on finance. So that's great. Usually it's how to connect again the customer to the bank representative. It could be the expert, the account manager, and all those stuff. We found a lot of interest on the public sector to connect the end citizen to the government services. So it's widely deployed. WebEx Teams, it's widely deployed on the like New York State, where all the injured people can join to a jury to say, hey, I'm injured, could you get a compensation from the state or from the employer? So a lot of public services use case. And this one is almost similar, so it's really how to connect an expert and with so an expert on a site to an expert on a desk. So what are the differences between the SDKs and widgets? So SDK stands for Software Development Kit. So basically it's a powerful library that you embed within your code. And by the way, who are developing, who are able to develop a mobile application or a website? Okay, so a bit less than 50%, yeah, let's say 1/3 of people. That's great. And so we build the SDK to embed teams in those applications. And then we created as well, on top of the SDK, we created a widget, which is even simpler to embed. So there's no need to be a full-time developer to do that. It's just a few lines of code to embed in a web page. And it embeds all the UI, all the nice interface from WebEx Teams. And the goal of the SDK, here I compared two apps, one business application, embedding WebEx. So you've got two together in one application. And here it's the experience you would have with regular collaboration app in parallel to the business app. So let's say you've got a doctor application and the collaboration application. You would have to switch in between the two applications. You would have to log in on the two applications. You would have to update the two applications together. Whereas when you embed the WebEx Teams SDKs or widget in your application, you've got a seamless experience, and the expert and the customer keep the context. So you keep the business context within your interaction. So when you are talking to the expert, you keep all the data, all the metrics of this business application, which is great. So a simpler end user experience and a simpler developer experience, because you as a developer, you can embed the application and no need to handle two authentication model, no need to authenticate twice and to handle two applications. So as I said, frictionless developer experience, so definitely easier for 1/3 of the population of this session as a developer, but all your end user will benefit from that as well. So from developer perspective, you've got a very powerful library. It handles all the new multi-stream features, such as multiple people at the same time. You've got all the great stuff from the iOS or Apple partnership, so Fastlane. We do have a booth over there with Apple that we share with Apple, so that you've got an even better video experience on a Cisco network together on an Apple device. So a lot of magical library inside, how to go through the firewalls, how to optimize the multi-stream together, how you handle audio cancellation as well, all together. Those SDK as well doesn't require add-on or add-in or plugin. It's all native, so we do a native SDK on iOS and Android, and we do WebRTC on web. So WebRTC means basically no need to add some add-in or extensions. So very powerful. And as I said before, you keep the end user within the context of the app. So it's really more powerful. And for the developers, all our SDKs and widgets are completely open source. So you can check the code, you can trust our code since you can see everything. And as well, you can propose some improvement if, we are not perfect for sure. We've got a long backlog of stuff that we would like to give you. But so feel free as well to contribute if you want to add some nice feature in it. We are more than happy to receive it. And I'm personally involved in reviewing your contribution. So please contribute. I love this model. It was a pretty tough decision within Cisco to move to an open source model. But now we are so happy to have it now, to get your contribution. So that's all the platform that we support today. We added some browser for desktop support. So now we support Safari, and we are working on Edge and Internet Explorer as well. So as you may know, Edge is moving to Chromium. So since we already support Chrome, Edge will be supported pretty soon. And Internet Explorer, at least for messaging, it will be supported pretty soon. Maybe not for video because it's not WebRTC, so there's no plan to support video on Internet Explorer because it's a pretty old platform and it's not WebRTC compliant. But at least for messaging, it's already working in beta internally, so pretty soon. On iOS, we support all the devices and all the recent versions, and same for Android, all the recent devices and all the recent softwares or OS. In terms of features, so you can handle. It's not only around video, but it's as well all the messaging features. So you've got the end-to-end encryption, you've got all the business messaging features. In terms of video, we support one-to-one or group calling, and the ability, which is pretty new, the ability to handle all the video streams all together. So you can put one video there, you can move them, you can display as many video as you wish. It could be only 1 or 5 or as you wish. And you can control the incoming notification, you can handle all the video and the audio setup within the application. So how you can leverage those SDKs and widgets? So you just need to a WebEx Teams account. As you know, it can be free, so you can start now with a free license with your existing account. Your existing account gives you access to our developer portal, so you just can play with our samples. We do have sample or example online to play with. And if you upgrade from free to paid license, then you get all the business messaging features. So the free give you access to all the SDKs and widgets, but if you go and upgrade to the paid, you get single sign-on, Active Directory integration, and all those business features. And on the portal, you can try and start a trial, so that even you can start a free trial with all the business features as well. So if you need that and maybe you're not sure you want to pay it for now, you can start with a free trial to get everything. So that's for regular users. Let's say in the example of the patient to doctor, the doctor will subscribe to Teams. But what about the patient? Maybe the patient, in our use case, the patient may not subscribe to Teams because hopefully he's pretty good health. He may need to join the doctor only 5 minutes a year, so he may not join or subscribe to Teams. That's why we created Guest a few months ago, so that's a pretty new offer. Now, you can create a guest account to the patient. So let's say a patient wants to reach a doctor, then it's mostly the developer of the hospital who would create an account for the guest so that he can reach the hospital or the doctor. Same for the bank, so the customer will have a guest account so that the customer can reach the bank expert. But the bank will have to subscribe to Teams. So we'll see how it works in few minutes with David. He will do a demo around this powerful solution. What is the widget? The widget is basically a UI on top of the SDK. So basically it's even simpler for you. You don't have to recreate all the interface. We took our web client and we split it in 2 parts. So we took this part and we created one widget, which is called Recent Widget. So all this part, it's a widget and you can embed in your website. And same for this part. So this part, it could be the messaging, it could be the video calling when you've got all the remote participants. And this part, same, it's another widget. So it's a separate widget and you can embed that in your website. And so it goes to this kind of interface. The recent widget, so the left side of the web client can be embedded within your Salesforce interface or a business application website. And same for the right side of the web client, which is called the space widget. you can embed that in your website, and you've got the messaging, you've got the video calling, all those interface. And that's very easy to embed, just a few lines of code in your website. Again, David will show it to you. So the power of the widget compared to the SDK, the widget embeds all the UI. It's again open source and pretty responsive. It's written in React, so a pretty well-known and appreciated standard. It goes with all the features. Well, most of the features that you can see on the web client, so I won't go in deep detail. You will have that. You can download it in the app from the Cisco Live app. So the ability to chat and to place a video call, to message. Same for the recent widget. You've got almost all the stuff that you can see already on the web client. And you can create some events between the widget and your application so that you can get notification on your browser or your website, depending on what's happening on the widget. So you can hook the widget with your application so that you've got smart events in between. So this is for reference, all the features on the different SDKs and the widget. What are new? So for those who attended in the previous version, in previous session last year maybe, we created the multi-stream. So the multi-stream is new, the ability to handle all the multiple video streams within a mobile application. That's new. The ability to share the content and real-time messaging has been enhanced. So again, now you've got real-time messaging encrypted in any kind of mobile application when you embed Teams in your application. So what's coming next? So what are we working on? So as I said, we are working on adding browser support, so IE, Edge, and supporting the mobile browsers as well. We are working on it. So it's not yet supported. We've got a lot of asks around supporting Safari on iOS, around supporting Chrome on Android. That's not yet there, but we're working on it. Adding some video layout, so different video layouts. Today you already can put together multi-stream on mobile, but not yet on web. On web, today you get only one active speaker view, and very soon we will add the group calling layout, the ability to see everyone. We are adding search, so search now is part of the widget, so now you can search at least by space name. So now with the widget you can type the name of the space, and then you will get the list of the spaces with this title. We are working on adding screen sharing as well from the widget. And then we are adding the other activities, so proximity. You may know proximity is the ability to pair a device with WebEx Teams. That's coming as well on the widget. And some other meetings features as well, such as mute remote participant or this kind of stuff. And again, if we are missing some big features that are very important for you and your customers, then reach us and or propose a contribution so that we can embed in our SDKs. So now let's go live on the demo. So David is gonna show you how the widget is embedded, can be embedded in a web app.
Thanks,
David?
Olivier. Thank you. Greetings. My name is David Stout. As I said earlier, I'm a developer evangelist with Cisco DevNet. I've worked in the collaboration API space with collaboration developers for a long time. And I still work with a bunch of other APIs in that area. But I've been really impressed with and excited with the WebEx Teams developers and the APIs and SDKs. They're really, really powerful, and they're really easy to use, and great documentation. So I've been really impressed to see what customers, partners, ISVs are building with these tools, and looking forward to seeing what people use these the latest features, especially persistent guest, which I think will really enable third-party application developers to use this really cool technology. So Olivier is the wisdom, the vision, the pretty face. I'm the engineer. I'm going to show you some actual down and gritty code and some concepts about how this actually works when you're developing with it. We're going to show two main pieces. That is the widgets, the browser-based PC widgets that he talked about, that basically take the WebEx team's browser-based implementation, break it apart into pieces, and allows you to reuse those graphical user interfaces to provide persistent messaging and voice and video in your browser-based application. It uses a whole bunch of fancy new age technologies that you can actually get into. So you can go to GitHub, take a look at all of the source code for the WebEx Teams widgets, download it, access it, hack it, change it, right? So you can change the look and feel, you can change the way it works, you can hide features, you can add features. It's all customizable and open source, which was kind of a new and weird thing for Cisco, but turns out to be a really powerful idea. Essentially the idea is to hide all of this power, all the WebRTC, network negotiations, and Opus video codec handling, hide all that, make it very easy to just drop these user interface things into your web application and almost immediately add voice and video to them. To get to Hello World, so if you just want to make a video call in a web page using a widget, this is kind of the most minimum set of code you will use. This is HTML. There's really a couple of main pieces here. We have the actual source code of the widget that we're going to import into our web page here. This is hosted in the WebEx cloud at a big CDN that's replicated around the world. So this bundle of JS holds all of that fancy widget stuff, right? All the video handling, all the message handling, all the security and encryption. That all gets sucked down into this browser page, comes alive, paints the UI, and everything just works inside that container. There is a CSS, right? So the look and feel, the layout, how everything is colored, all that is downloaded as well from the CDN. But the point is that you can download these separately and host them on your own server and modify them, right? So you can lock down the features, functions, and the versions of this, or you can modify this, right? So you can change the buttons so that they match the colors in your website, that kind of thing. So that's all possibility. And then here's where it actually happens. We can assign a container, an HTML div element, which basically is just an empty container in the page. We say we want this to be a Cisco Spark-space object. I assume one day we'll change that name. We need an access token, and we need somebody that we want to call in the case of a one-to-one video session. That means that any div in your web page can be turned into this widget, right? So all this functionality is going to appear right here, and this can be anywhere in our page. It can be in a pop-up window, it can be in a little corner that appears or disappears depending on whether you have a call going on, etc. And this is what it looks like, right? So we are encapsulating in a web page all the features and functionalities of the WebEx Teams client. If you click on here, we can do a video call, we can share files, we can do screen sharing, all that good stuff. So let's take a look at our sample application. So the sample app I'm going to show today is hosted on GitHub on the Cisco DevNet account. So you can go download and play with this immediately, but I'm just going to clone it here real quick using the Git tool. I'm going to install my Node.js dependencies. This is a JavaScript server-side application using Node.js. And then I'm going to open this source code in my Visual Studio Code IDE. So I can launch this in debug mode. What this does is starts a little web browser on my local PC, and I can actually go over to my browser and show you what that looks like now. This is for maybe a dummy financial services site, right? So you have different experts within your organization that may focus on, home mortgages or student loans, auto loans, that kind of thing. Say currently when you click on Ask Sandy, it pops up a web form, that goes to fulfillment, they send you a mail or something like that. What if you could click on this button and immediately get connected to that expert, right? It's a very effective video session, high quality HD video. You can share files, right? You can exchange signatures right there during the session. It's all persistent, so you can see the history of that conversation. Would be a much more compelling experience here. So let's do that minimum hello world that we saw earlier. That page, let's see. Let's look at widget.html. This is the bare minimum. So we have the script bundle that we're downloading that contains all that widget source code. We are going to instantiate a widget. And there's two key pieces of information we need. So we need an access token. This is a credential that identifies the person that's going to be making the call. In this case, I'm going to go to developer.webex.com. And if I go to documentation and getting started, I can grab my personal access token just to test with. Let me actually log in with a different account while I do this.
So David is logging on another account on the developer portal to get another token, so that the token is always associated to this end user, and so that when he will apply on the API will apply on behalf of this new user.
Okay. So I'm going to paste my access token in there. Interesting. Looks like it's changed a little bit. That's a long encrypted, essentially credential that identifies that dstout@usa.net account. And the two-person email is the target. So let's say I want to call dstout@cisco.com, which is my mobile phone right here. If I save this page, just to test this, and notice this is just a very, very simple HTML page. There's no buttons, there's no interface. All that's there is the widget. What if I open that up? So if I do localhost, widget.html. Okay. So the widget will expand to take up as much space as you give the container. In this case, it's the whole screen. Not particularly ideal. But if you are familiar with the WebEx Teams UI, especially the web version, this is a complete client in here, right? So I have all the history of the interactions that I've done between dstout@usa.net and cisco.com. I have my activity menu up here, so I can do a call, use WebRTC to use my PC audio and speaker. And if I answer on my mobile, nice. Nice clear video call. We have good bandwidth in here.
So through a WebRTC session without plugin, as you see, no plugin, no add-on, no extension.
Yeah, so I didn't have to install anything. I didn't even have to host the widget code. All I had to do was put that one link in there and then create a div target where I wanted this widget to show up. Okay, so that's interesting. We made a call from one person to another, very, very simply. What if we want to use the persistent guest feature, right? So in this case, this user credential is my alternate WebEx Teams account. This right here is my Cisco account. We're both WebEx Teams users. That's cool, users can call users, that makes sense. But what if you want to use this in a customer-facing environment, right? Where the customer almost certainly doesn't have a WebEx Teams account. And even if they did, we wouldn't want to trouble them to log in just to talk to us, right? We want this to be as seamless as possible. The persistent guest feature lets you dynamically create accounts based on your developer account. So what we're going to do is take some information. For example, if I log in as Jane Doe at example.com to this page, what I want to happen is to, when I click on this button, dynamically create that Jane Doe account using my persistent guest capabilities as a developer on WebEx Teams, and then launch directly into a video call. So that takes a little bit of code, right? We need to do something dynamically. It's not just a static HTML page. So the web page that we are going to present looks pretty similar, except that we are using a handlebars template to dynamically insert the persistent guest token that we're going to generate on the fly. We're also going to dynamically change the target, right? So you may not always want to call the exact same WebEx Teams ID. You may want to have a list of people that are logged in or available and change that target dynamically. Okay, so we have a template here. How do we fill that in real time with code? That's where this JavaScript file comes in. Okay. So the key to using persistent guest is something called the JavaScript Web Token, a JWT. If you go to jwt.com, jwt.io, I think.
Yep.
You can learn all about JWTs, what they are, but essentially it's a big opaque signed and encrypted thing that contains some data, some JavaScript. Essentially a username and an ID and some other stuff that we'll use in this application. So this is the code. It's not too bad. This is sort of the basic stuff. Luckily, there is a Node.js open source library called JSON Web Token that makes it very, very easy to create and manage and work with these JWT tokens. And it's as simple as creating a payload. The subject is going to be the user, right? So we extract, where is it? The user ID from this field in the web page, send it into this code. We create a payload with the subject of that username. We're going to reuse that for their display name. We give the WebEx Teams guest issuer ID as part of this JWT token. We'll talk about that in a second. And then an expiration date. So this is very important. You want this JWT token to be very short-lived because you want this guest user account to be created, then logged in immediately, and you don't want this JWT token to be later hacked out of that person's browser or something like that. So there's an expiration date for that. So we mentioned a guest issuer ID. What does that mean? Well, it turns out this is another type of application that you can create as a WebEx developer. Let me log back into my Cisco account. But essentially, you can only create guest issuers, persistent guest accounts, if you, as a developer, are a member of a paid organization with WebEx Teams. So you won't be able to try this out with just a free account.
But it's available on the trial. So
yeah.
If you don't have a paid account yet as a developer, you can create a trial on the WebEx Teams portal. You create a trial, and then with your trial account, you will be able to do whatever David is doing.
That's right. So I can go into my WebEx Teams apps and simply create a guest issuer account. It's very simple. You just give it a name, and there's two key pieces of information that are generated. Again, a long credential code, the guest issuer ID, and the shared secret. So I'm going to copy these and paste them into my application so it knows who I am as a guest issuer. I'm going to go ahead and specify the target to call, again, as dstout@cisco.com. And once we've created that payload, right, so once we've said, hey, we want to create a new account for janedoe@example.com, here's my credential as a guest issuer developer. Essentially, you encode this with your WebEx Teams guest issuer secret. You create a token that's signed with the library, and then you're ready to do the render, which actually displays the web page with this information pasted into it. So let's put a breakpoint in there so we can see some of this information. Ten minutes left. Good, we're in good time. So I'm going to go ahead and restart the app so it reloads my guest information. And now, so let's say I've logged in here as janedoe@example.com, and I want to talk about student loans. Okay, so as soon as I click on that, web request goes back to the server that's running here on my desktop. I've set a breakpoint, so I interrupt the processing of this request. So we can look at the details. If I hover over here, I can see that the subject name and the display name are janedoe@example.com. My guest issuer ID account has been embedded into that payload. And if I look at the actual JWT token, it's this long series of letters and numbers. If I copy this, and go back to that JWT.io site and paste it in here, I can double check, right? So I can see that long token breaks down into janedoe@example.com. All right, so let's let the code run. Hopefully it didn't take too long. Breakpoints. Okay, so what we've done here is create a pop-up window so that the conversation is contained in this floating window, which means that we can go ahead and browse the rest of the site, right? So this person can help guide us through the website if we have any questions, want to download any particular documents. I'm going to allow the WebRTC controls. And we've configured this component to launch directly into a video session. Cool. Now if you look at my phone, you can see that this call is coming from janedoe@example.com. So this was a dynamically created account. Happens very quickly. And there's no WebEx Teams branding here. You get to control the complete look and feel. So this really can be almost like a white box service where you use our infrastructure for secure, high quality video communications, embed it into your application seamlessly. And we handle all the hard part.
Even on the widget who appeared on the top left, it was completely, there was no WebEx Teams logo, so it's really your brand.
That's right. And since it's an open source project, you can actually go into the source code and change that CSS. You can change the coloring to match your website so it looks seamless. Cool. So what if you want to do mobile? All right. So if you're an Android developer, we have, again, an SDK that is available on the developer.webex.com site. I'll just show you where that is. Here under SDKs, we're looking at the Android SDK. All the information is there on how to get started with this, including a link to the sample app. Right? So I can clone this entire sample application to my PC, open it up in Android Studio, check it out, make sure it works with my system, and then essentially just copy and paste the code that's already been developed here. Right? So this is just to show it running. Compile it and run it real quick. This is an emulated Pixel 2 on my PC here. This essentially is a kitchen sink kind of demo app. So basically every functionality of the SDK is presented in here. Come on. What am I doing wrong? Huh. Is it the did I get the username wrong? There we go. So this is a standard Android application, right? It's based on Java. The UI is completely controlled by your developers. So if this is your existing customer-facing Android application, it's very easy to just add the WebEx Teams SDK as an additional dependency in your Gradle file. This example contains basically all the functionality. So I can go into initiate call. Again, check the video functionality, make sure it's working. Cool. So all the controls are exposed. I can turn on and off video. I can do screen sharing. I can change which camera I want to display at any given point in time. I can do messaging and chat. So if I want to say hello. Yeah, that message comes through on my mobile phone on this account. So it makes it very easy to then check out the actual code here, which is pretty straightforward. So there's a lot of fancy Android functionality in here to do all the network negotiation and firewall traversal, Opus codec handling. All that is abstracted for you, so that all you need to do is come in here and essentially copy and paste in these functions, right? So if you want to do a dial, you paste in this function, you make sure that the callee is the WebEx Teams ID of the person that you want to call, or that could be a phone number or a SIP address or something like that. You choose the local and remote view where you want the video pieces to show up in your user interface. If you have screen sharing, you set an area aside for that. And then you do a phone.dial, okay? Do some error handling and that's it. If you want to hang up the call, again, just a few lines of code. If you want to answer an incoming call, you can do that as well. And then all the camera handling and video handling, etc. So the cool thing is that you can embed all this functionality into your Android application very simply. You simply add the SDK into the Gradle file so that it gets incorporated in the build process. You decide where you want the videos to go. So it can be in a pop-up window, it can float, it can be embedded somewhere. And then you can take the sample code that's in here, paste that into your application code to handle the button clicks and all that stuff, and you're good to go. All right? So we handle all that cloud infrastructure. We make sure the bandwidth is working, and you can route these customer calls from your mobile application, for example, using WebEx Teams hybrid calling into your on-premise video-enabled Cisco contact center. So it's a really cool solution. Really glad this persistent guest feature is out there now. I'm excited to see what people are developing with it. After the session, if you want to ask us some questions, I know Olivier has some folks, some examples of real-world use cases where the persistent guest feature has been deployed in production and is working great. So we're really happy to talk about that. Again, the place to get started with all of this code is developer.webex.com, right? So this is the hub. All the SDKs are here, all the documentation is here. If you have a free account, you can do everything, including voice and video. You can do OAuth integrations, you can do bots, all for free. Get started immediately. The only thing that you'll need a trial account for or a paid account for, like I said, is that persistent guest feature. So great. I think at this point we're ready to open up for questions. Anybody, questions or comments? Good.
Any question? Yeah. Anyway, we will stay around, so you can switch back to the PowerPoint. We'll be around in the next minutes if you've got some one-to-one questions, if you want. So please as well ask in the space. You can join from the Cisco event application, this specific space where David and myself will be there for the next couple of weeks or months. So we'll be able as well to answer questions later. And if you go in the next one, so we've got this hands-on session tomorrow where you can work on the guest token that David showcased. As well, we've got some hands-on session on the Apple booth that we do have over there, where we showcase the iOS SDK. So David showed you the Android SDK. It's as easy as well on iOS SDK, how to embed WebEx Teams on the iOS application. And we've got as well some other session on JavaScript. If you are more willing to develop around web and widget, we've got some session on that as well. And then with that, please complete the survey, because as a PM, I would love to hear from you what we should improve about the documentation, about the product, what we are missing, what you need. I really want to know what you need, so that we can put that in our backlog, and so that I can prioritize it more faster, so that you can use it now. And then, yeah. And then, so again, please ask if you've got any kind of question. Any question live? No. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and yeah, enjoy your Cisco Live. And Barcelona, great city. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Olivier.